Welcome to the ADLC Provisional Working Group presentation on the subject of Rustico Urbano. You will remember at the AGM last September, it was agreed that a working party would be formed comprising of volunteers to represent ADLC residents and investigate various topics under the umbrella of Rustico Urbano. The purpose of this group is to inform residents about the options open to us. COVID regulations have dictated that no meeting could be held to present you our findings, so the group has produced this video outlining what we have discovered. This, along with the FAQs already sent to you, should provide a clear picture of the situation at ADLC. If you have not yet received FAQs, please ask one of the residents in the Provisional Working Group, and the details of those are coming up after the next slide. It should be noted that there is no legal or governmental obligation on ADLC owners to do anything at all. We can just stay as we are. The whole issue has been raised as there are owners at ADLC who would like to develop their properties and under the law cannot. Please take your time to consider your position. Here are the names of the volunteers and their villa numbers. They've worked hard over the past few months to bring you both the FAQs and this presentation. Building at ADLC has not been allowed since 1987. Any extensions, swimming pools, garages and other alterations made since then have been without proper permissions from the Town Hall and therefore outside the law, as will be the case throughout the UK and the rest of Europe. This situation has arisen because the ADLC development has not been completed according to the regulations to meet Urbano standards. Many owners have bought property on ADLC assuming building is allowed, only to find that any development has been outside the law and has therefore attracted heavy fines from the Town Hall in Benidorm. We estimate that €250,000 or more has been paid to the Town Hall in fines over the years. Such illegal building needs to be reflected in the land registry. This can, and indeed has been, successfully carried out with the help of qualified architects at the cost of the owner of the relevant villa. If your pre-1987 property has no illegal building, then you can relax. You will be able to obtain all the required certificates you may need when you come to sell or rent. This situation, whereby potential owners may have been misled into believing further development is allowed and pools and garages can be built, has now changed. This more honest and open situation is reflected in the new escrituras. New owners can rest assured that no further development is permitted and ADLC will remain unchanged for years to come. For any new development at ADLC to be considered by the Town Hall, the land would need to be reclassified at the cost of all the owners. The laws in Spain are always changing and will continue to do so. This slide shows the timeline of relevant events at ADLC since development started in 1972. This will be of most value to owners who are not aware of the history. In 1987, building ceased at ADLC and no further building permission has been granted since that time. During the 90s, several versions of Plan Parcial were drafted. In 2001, the then existing Association of Owners was replaced with the Comunidad Compact. In 2003, a Plan Parcial was submitted to the authorities in Alicante, however this was not approved. In 2016, ADLC land was reclassified as Rustico and our lower IBI rates reflect this change. In November 2019, at an EGM of Compact, the debate on the subject of Rustico Urbano began. The Provisional Work Group was formed following the Compact AGM in September of 2020 to gather relevant information for owners at ADLC. The slideshow covers the following areas: municipalities, law, roads, pavements and street lighting, wastewater, Plan Parcial and a cost-benefit analysis, followed by a summary and suggested next steps. If we choose, as individual owners, that the way forward is to do nothing at this stage, should there be any changes to be made in the future, we'll be informed by the relevant authority. If we choose as individual owners that the way forward is to pursue, at some considerable cost, a plan partial as the first step towards changing the ADLC status to Urbano over the coming years, then there is no guarantee that our proposals will be approved by the authorities, and that, even with the change of status, building permission may not be granted. Once all the Urbano work has been concluded, and assuming the authorities approve the work done, the status would change to Urbano. Land values will increase for bank evaluation purposes for mortgages, and IBI rates will rise, say, threefold. And as the current mayor has stated that the town hall will not adopt and maintain the urbanisation, our annual fees will increase considerably. It is unlikely that villa sale and rental prices will change up or down. The process to Urbano may take 5, 10 or even more years to complete, during which time properties may be difficult to sell, as the cost of altering ADLC to reach Urbano status will be a liability against all our properties. Now sit back and please enjoy the presentation. We have collated the questions from the November 2019 EGM and provided a lot of answers on the questions from owners on the Rustico Urbano matter. ADLC was developed between 1972 and 1986. Since 1987, ADLC has remained in the so-called SAPU 2 zone of the Beni-Delage town plan as an area for development. The letter from the mayor of Beni-Delage explains that the Urbanización Aldea-Cuevas is a residential development lacking certain services for the land in question to be considered urbanised. It is therefore classified as land suitable for development. This means that the land will be treated as rural land. In Law 13 of 2015, an entry was made, a ruling of the Supreme Court, which resulted in a division for the rating of the properties. So land is rated as rural, and the building and the area of the building, i.e. the footprint, is rated as urban. This is why you may now see 2 references on your IBI bill. So the question arises, do we need to change the status of ADLC? Aldea-Cuevas is spread over 3 communities. Beni-Delage, which covers the majority of the properties, Pedreguer and Alcalá. This makes the matter quite complex, but Beni-Delage has confirmed that they would take the leading role in any process going forward and communicate with Pedreguer and Alcalá about the possibilities of any plans covering all the municipalities. An agreement between all the municipalities is required before any agreement can be finalised. But do the 3 municipalities want ADLC to change? As far as we know, there is no intention to see ADLC change status, at least for the moment. There is no pressure from Beni-Delage to change, and the mayor has stated that any change is the responsibility of the residents, and the town hall will support whatever the residents desire. There is a lot of information regarding the relevant law addressed in the FAQ documents, so we suggest you give those a read. As to the question, do we take any action, there are 2 differing opinions. Yes, according to the letter of Juan Enrique, and no, the opinion of other lawyers. The members of the Provisional Working Group are not lawyers, and your personal situation as an owner might differ from another owner. So if you require any further legal advice, we recommend that you seek your own legal opinion. As far as we know, there is no legal requirement to change any status at ADLC. Measuring the length of the roads, we came up with a total of nearly 8 kilometres and a total of 50,000 square metres of tarmac. The requirements described here are for a new urbanisation, therefore new roads. Existing roads may not be subject to these requirements. The minimum requirement for footpaths is 1 metre wide. Footpaths may not be required for both sides of the road, or perhaps not required for every road. The minimum requirement for street lighting is 6 metre high lamps with 60 watt bulbs every 30 metres. Once again, they might not be required for every road, or not required for both sides of the road. The cost for tarmac is estimated at €6 to €6.50 per square metre, and that quote came from a firm which does most of the local municipality work. Not compliant here means resurfacing existing roads as required. Not fully compliant means we will propose to widen the roads where it's physically possible, and compliant means that we will follow the Alicante requirement. The cost figures will be shown in a table at the end of the presentation, and these do not include the cost for demolishing walls, cutting into rock to create room for a wider road or a footpath, or for any compensation to owners for any land that may be taken. The cost for pavement is estimated at €30 a square metre. And in this case, non-compliant means we'll just paint lines on the existing roads to mark out walkways. And we mean by not fully compliant that pavements will be put in where the space allows, let's say 2 kilometres, and that would come to €60,000. And fully compliant means we will follow the Alicante regulations, so that would be 8 kilometres, which would mean €240,000. Once again, these costs will be shown in the table at the end of the presentation. And again, they do not include any cost for wall demolishing, or for cutting into rock to create room for any wider road or footpath, or for compensating any owners for any land that may be taken. The cost per street light is estimated at €5,000 per unit. This cost should include shipping, import duties, EVA and installation costs. For streetlights non-compliant, we mean strategically placed streetlights, for example at road junctions. Using 50 units, therefore, would be €250,000. Where we talk about not fully compliant, we propose to put the lights just down one side of the roads, so 266 units, and that comes to €1.33 million. And fully compliant, as per the Alicante requirement, would be 532 units, or €2.66 million. This information regarding fire hydrants was supplied to us at the discretion of the fire officer. The fire hydrant supply must be of the required pressure and flow throughout the urbanisation. This may require a separate independent system for the supply of the hydrant outlets. The cost for a fire hydrant is estimated at €5,000 per unit. This cost includes shipping, import duty, EVA and installation. And where we refer to non-compliant, we mean we won't place any, so there will be a zero cost. Where we say we'll go for not fully compliant, we're talking about strategically placing fire hydrants on the existing domestic system at, say, 10 units across ADLC at a cost of €50,000. When we refer to compliant here, it's as per the requirement for Alicante. So on a separate system, 80 fire hydrants and something for an independent water system, let's say €500,000. So we come to wastewater. Are we contaminating the water? Ever since there was first talk of urbanisation at ADLC, some residents of Benidorm have been claiming contamination of the village water supply. This has become something of folklore, and there has never been an instance of ADLC contaminating any water supply. Do we need to change our septic tanks? Or perhaps we should ask, when might we need to change them? And do we need to connect to a mains sewer system? Our septic tanks, like most of the septic tanks in Spain, and indeed the rest of the world, are simple brick-built tanks. These tanks allow gravity to separate the solids out initially, then natural bacteria start to decompose the waste before a so-called clean outflow leaves the tank to the surrounding ground. This is fine for one-off isolated dwellings, but not suitable for dense population areas. ADLC is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a densely populated area. However, this traditional installation is not EU approved. The EU law now states that the standard for today's septic tanks should include some aeration to promote the bacterial action as shown on this slide. This is a photo taken from a brochure from Mar Orba, one of the builders merchants in Orba. As you can see, for under €10,000, you can probably have an EU standard septic tank installed, but this does depend on your villa layout, access, and how your tank is positioned. This tank is also the smallest and is suitable for a household of up to 4. Yes, the size of the tank does depend on the size of the villa, bathrooms, toilets and other facilities you may have. Here are some facts and figures from Pedro Urbano, local architect, which Miles kindly made available for this presentation. Basically, Pedro says that the low volumes of wastewater ADLC may cause mains sewers to block due to a lack of water flow. When you come to sell your villa, you will need a certificate of habitation. Depending on your local council, you may be required to change your septic tank in order to obtain the certificate. Alcalali, at the moment, requires septic tanks to be upgraded, while Benidorm and Pedreguer do not. The town planner and architect at Benidorm Town Hall tells us that if there is a plan parcial, then the water authority in Valencia, CHJ, Confederación Hidrográfica UCAR, can request us to upgrade our septic tanks. It's definitely worth noting that while we were putting this presentation together, CHJ has changed the rules, at least for Denia, and now EU-approved tanks with full aeration are no longer acceptable. Instead, watertight tanks must be used and emptied as needed. Thankfully, no one has swapped their tank for a now obsolete EU-approved tank. Installation of a main sewer system on the mountain at this distance from the village and the road at the bottom of the hill would be both technically challenging and excessively expensive. It is therefore believed that mains drainage will not be called for. So on this slide we refer to not compliant as meaning we do not change our tanks, so there's a zero cost. Not fully compliant and fully compliant would require changing of the septic tanks. And we must note that at the moment these are costed for eco-friendly tanks, but the new CHJ requirement for watertight tanks has not yet been costed. Also, it's worth note that these costs are not included in any community-wide status change, and each owner will be responsible for their own tanks. Land in Spain is split into 3 types for different classifications. There is rustic land, urban land, and urbanizable land. As we all know, ADLC was not completed to proper urbanized standards, and as a consequence, we now have both rustic and urban land. The footprint on which the villas are built are classified as urban land, and all the remaining land is rustic. So the buildings are legal, and this is the reason why we have rustic IBI for the land and urban IBI for the property upon the land. A plan parcial is a document which defines the use and occupation of the land, and it must consider any particular problems which the urbanisation has, for instance wastewater. The land use must include roads, car parks, recreational areas, green zones and common elements, and also the layout of the network of utilities. The plan must also consider the economic and financial viability of the execution of the plan. This is the first step leading towards reclassification of the land. Subsequent steps include land parcellation and the urbanisation project plan. The formulation of the plan partial will be paid for by the interested parties. That's us as the owners. First of all, the plan partial must be approved by the mayor. Then that goes to a town hall committee, then on to Alicante before being sent to Valencia for final acceptance. There is no guarantee of the plan being accepted or that any individual planning applications will be granted even if the overall plan is accepted. Previous attempts at a plan partial for ADLC have not been accepted. A project plan is the route to conformity of an urbanisation, which must include all of the costs required for it to conform. They include the application for the plan partial, which in our case is in the region of €250,000, and this excludes the geofencing of the boundaries and compliance with planning, escritura, etc., and the costs of all the improvements required to comply. Once achieved, and based on the law Ley 2019, we would need to be prepared to improve our roads, add footpaths, green areas, street lighting, wastewater, i.e. septic tanks, and fire hydrants. The breakdown of costs is shown in the cost-benefit analysis further in this presentation. It is important to note that the laws in Spain are ever moving, and we may never be able to fulfil the requirement, or even have to. Hence all the solicitors we have spoken to have suggested that we do nothing. All projects have a cost. This study is intended to determine, as far as possible, whether pressing ahead with converting ADLC status brings benefits that outweigh those costs. The objective is to allow the owners of ADLC to make informed decisions about the future they desire. In the cost-benefit analysis which follows, we refer to non-compliant and not fully compliant. There is no guarantee that these options would be acceptable to the authorities. The elements in this analysis are those required for a plan partial to be submitted and hopefully approved, and it might, only might, lead to a change of status of ADLC to Urbano. Previous attempts at a plan partial, going back to 2003, were rejected. It should be appreciated that the costings given in this presentation are best estimates, and wherever possible they are broken down into non-compliant, not fully compliant, and compliant statuses. And as ever, please for further detail refer to the FAQs. This plan partial document is for submission to authorities in Alicante to determine whether our proposals are acceptable. The cost of €250,000 is reasonably accurate and has been supplied by an outside firm. This equates to approximately €1,500 per villa. How these costs will be allocated equitably to landowners is yet to be determined. However, we must consider the landowners and how much they'll have to contribute. They will also have to contribute not just for the improvements, but also for the already existing infrastructure that we've all paid for, which they will benefit from. The existing roads, the green areas, etc. It will also go some way to reducing the cost per existing villa owner. Alicante authorities state that urbanisations must include green areas, car parks, recreational areas with fitness equipment, trees, irrigation, signage and benches, and the costs here are suggested costs for the provision of these facilities. Where we say not compliant, we've estimated €50,000, not fully compliant €100,000, and fully compliant €250,000. So here is that table I was referring to. Adding up the total of all the estimated costs, the non-compliant total is €555,000 and the not fully compliant total is €1.79 million, and the fully compliant total would be €3.91 million. And don't forget that these totals assume we do not have to do any work on the roads. If you consider those total estimated costs for all of ADLC and then divide that by 163, that being the number of villas, then you arrive at the cost per villa. And this table shows those costs for the owners, including a septic tank upgrade. So if we go for non-compliant, then the total cost per villa is €12,500. If we look at not fully compliant, the cost per villa would be €20,000. And if we follow the regulations, we arrive at €33,000 per villa. Please also note that our annual fees, currently €500 per villa per year, would increase dramatically to cover the maintenance of the new infrastructure, streetlights, pavements, etc. There are benefits. Land value will increase because the classification will, if approved, change to Urbano. Also, previous alterations may be regularised. However, the Town Hall would need to be involved in any retrospective permissions to be reflected in the deeds. New building may be possible with neighbours and Town Hall permissions, and of course within building regulations. For further details, please refer to your FAQs. Is there a legal requirement to change to Urbano? The answer is no. Is it wise, or do we want to change to Urbano? Well, this is up to the individual owner. If owners have made alterations without permission or intend to alter or develop their property, then it would be in their interest. And what about the costs and benefits? Any change will bring about costs, and the benefits differ from owner to owner, dependent upon whether or not you want to or intend to alter or develop the property. Now, please read the information in the FAQs. After you've seen this presentation as well, ask yourself the question, do I know enough? What are the likely benefits to you? This is personal and will differ from owner to owner. Costs are involved, and every owner will have to share the costs. So also ask yourself another question. Do I want to spend my money on this? Well, that's it. Thank you for taking the time to read the FAQs and follow this presentation. And please remember that in the end, the decision to make any changes lies with you as an owner, not the committee, not Compac, not the Town Hall, only ourselves as owners.